What's going on, guys? Supersavage789 here, bringing you guys a video doing what if Endeavour got one for all. So without further ado, let's just hop into this timeline, no messing about. In this timeline, we're going to say that having multiple quirks does not reduce your lifespan, at least by a significant amount. This means that giving one for all to someone with a quirk will not lead to their death very quickly. Now this might not initially seem like it'd lead to the title change, however there'd be one key player in this. The fourth user, Shinomori, would survive a lot longer. He'd still give one for all to Banjo, but he'd be able to further give off his influence to his student. Eventually, Shinomori would lose one for all, but would live long enough to watch All for One kill Banjo, as well as to witness N get one for all. He's also present to watch the same thing happen to N, of him giving the quirk onto Nana. By now, Shinomori would be an old man and nearing death, so he makes sure to give Nana some advice. He tells her that when she hands off one for all, she should be careful who she gives it to. She needs to give it to a strong individual who will become exponentially stronger with the aid of one for all. He'd pass away, but his lesson would stick with Nana, which she chooses on taking a student. After looking at student results, she finds one individual of high battle power and good results. This is of course Enji Todoroki. She would approach him and explain the situation, which he would naturally accept, so Nana would begin training Endeavour with help from Gran Torino. He's an exceptionally strong individual already, however his personality is an issue, so they also make sure to mellow Endeavour out a bit, which I think they'd be able to do. So by the time Endeavour inherits one for all and becomes a pro hero, his personality would be a lot like his personality in canon after he becomes the number one. Endeavour would easily become the number one hero after Nana's passing, thanks to the immense strength one for all gives him. It not only enhances his physical strength, but makes his flames that much more intense. When he uses the full 100%, his flames become blue and that much more intense. He doesn't resort to this that often though, due to the carnage it could cause. He'd instead opt to use one for all like All Might does, switching to the higher percentages only on impact. And even then, he won't typically use high levels combined with his flames. During the fight with All for One, Endeavour would be able to defeat him with relative ease, and does even more damage to him than All Might did, burning off the majority of his skin. Endeavour wouldn't get injured from this either, which is a plus. I imagine he would still meet Ray, although they'd have more of a romance here. They still have kids, but it isn't with the goal of combining their quirks. It is instead simply because they want to start a family. Thanks to Endeavour having a better personality, as well as already being the number one hero, at least Toya not becoming crazy, and devoting himself to making his father proud. This means that he never becomes Darby. He would age and train at a much slower rate, allowing him to better grasp his powers. I imagine that he would become a pro hero, and a successful one at that. Endeavour would think about giving Toya one for all to make sure the quirk continues going, however he would choose otherwise. Toya's flames are already more intense than his, but his body is more fragile. He may turn himself to ash upon first usage. So when Shoto is born and shows off his quirk, Endeavour would realize he has his successor. He would let Shoto have a childhood and wait for him to grow up before he begins the training, not revealing the secret of one for all to him. Shoto would never get burned by Ray, and would never come to resent his fireside, leading to him learning how to use both sides while he grows up. Toya would be rather jealous of the attention Shoto gets and would grow to resent his younger brother. Someone else who would be affected by Endeavour getting one for all would of course be Toshinori Yagi, aka All Might. I doubt that he'd give up on becoming a hero, regardless if he was quirkless. Thanks to David's shield, All Might would be given a wide variety of different gadgets to allow him to live out his dream of stopping villains. He won't be close to his canon strength, but at least he can do something. I imagine he becomes somewhat popular thanks to his personality, and so I think we could see him becoming the 5th most popular hero in Japan. He would still get Night Eye as a sidekick, however thanks to never becoming injured, the duo would not split up and remain as partners going into present day. Speaking of present day, the sludge villain thing would still happen, with All Might saving Izuku, and Izuku hanging onto his leg. When arriving on the rooftop, Izuku would ask if he can become a hero, however All Might's answer would be much different here. Of course he can, just look at him for example. All Might would then leave to go meet up with Night Eye, leaving a smile on Izuku's face. When returning home, Izuku would run into Bakugo being controlled, and goes to save him. All Might then shows up and stops the villain, freeing Bakugo. He'd catch up to Izuku later on and congratulates him on showing bravery in the face of a villain, offering to take him on as a student. Naturally, Izuku would agree until he'd begin to train. He'd clear Dagobah Beach out like normal, and gets quite bulky as a result. When the entrance exam shows up, not much would really change until the moment Uraraka gets trapped. Izuku still moves to save her, but without One For All, he's unable to make the rubble budge. Before he can get crushed though, he's able to draw out all his strength and saves her barely, just as the time runs out. He'd get hero points to get to the UA like normal. Meanwhile, everyone recommended would do just as well as in canon, however there'd be a significant change. Inasa wouldn't have that much of a negative experience both Shoto and Endeavour, meaning that he actually gets into UA here. So we'll place him in 1A, we'll move Yairozu to 1B, and move Tokage out of UA into a different hero school. After Shoto gets into UA, Endeavour would finally reveal the secrets of One For All to his son and tells him it's his destiny to inherit it. Shoto would be reluctant, but I think he would agree, and eats one of his father's hairs. Shoto wouldn't feel very different at first, and would need to figure out how these powers work. He'd have it very careful when using the quirk, and so he'd have Endeavour teach him how to use it. First time he uses it, he creates a massive glacier that completely freezes his left side, as well as a large majority of the Todoroki residents. Next time he creates a massive inferno that he can't stop, leading to Toya knocking his brother out to avoid further damage. Shoto quickly realizes that using One For All recklessly and dangerous, and also breaks his limbs. Recovery Girl would be called to fix those, by the way. So when Shoto is training, he'd be trying to contain One For All to one side of him. It'd take a few tries, but luckily Shoto's a prodigy, so he's able to place 5% into one half of him at a time. It's not full Carl, of course, but it's something similar and is more accustomed to Shoto. Like in canon, Izuku would head to Class 1A and sees Ida and Bakugo arguing, as well as Inasa fanboying over Shoto. Aizawa shows up and would tell everyone to take their seats, explain the practical exam. To save time, Izuku would still fail, but I think Aizawa would cut some slack and let him stay within UA. He does tell him that he'll have to try even harder if he wants to stay though, which Izuku agrees with. Then the All Might training shows up and we get to see everyone in their hero suits. Izuku would have the same suit, as the gear All Might requested for him is taking a while to be shipped from America. So going into the training, he'll just be quirkless. Surprisingly though, the large majority of the fights with Bakugo go like normal, since Izuku couldn't use One For All in that fight anyway. It just means that the end of the fight goes slightly differently. Since Izuku can't give Uraraka the opening she needs, Ida is able to keep her at bay while the time limit runs out. So Ida and Bakugo would win, instead of Izuku and Uraraka. Other fights that would change. Shoto would defeat Hagakure and Ojiro even easier for obvious reasons. Also, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume Inasa would be able to defeat Kaminari and Jiro with help from Mineta. Next up is USJ. This would go vastly differently though. Endeavour won't be present here, so the League wouldn't need to attack. Instead, this would simply be another training arc, of everyone learning how to react to different situations, and fight much better alone, and as a team. The League of Villains wouldn't simply give up, attacking Endeavour though, as coming up, there is a notable event he'll be making an appearance at. Sadly though, we'll have to save that for next time. What do you guys think of this timeline? I think the changes present are definitely interesting, and will lead to a very different My Hero Academia. And, yeah. Subscribe if you want to see another part, like if you want to see another part, let me know your ideas for different what ifs, and yeah, bye!